My mother once told me she wished I had never been born. She did not scream it in the middle of a fight. She slipped it into Thanksgiving dinner like it was just another side dish. When I tell people that, they always ask the same thing. Why did you go back after that? The truth is that Thanksgiving was not the first time she hurt me. It was just the first time I finally believed her. My mother always said Thanksgiving was about family. It sounded sweet, almost like one of those signs you buy at a home decor store, until you realize not every family looks like the ones in those commercials. Still, I loaded my suitcase into the trunk, braved the cold rain, and drove 3 hours back to the house I used to call home. Every year I told myself, maybe this year would be different. Every year I was wrong. But that year, I had no idea just how different it would be. When I pulled into the driveway, my parents' house looked like a picture on a real estate flyer. The porch light glowed warm and inviting. A wreath hung perfectly centered on the front door, and through the windows I could see the soft flicker of candles on the sideboard in the dining room. My mother's fingerprints were everywhere. Not literal ones, of course. She would have shuddered at the thought. I mean her touch. Every surface polished, every cushion fluffed. Not a stray leaf on the lawn. My mother liked things neat, controlled, enviable. She was the kind of woman other women in town wanted to impress and secretly resented. I walked in with a practiced smile already plastered on my face. She pulled me into a hug that smelled like jasmine perfume and control. "Grace, you made it," she said, patting my back like she was burping a baby, and then immediately straightening the collar of my coat. My father gave me a half wave from the couch, remote in hand, pretending that the football game needed his full attention. In the kitchen, my brother Evan stood at the center of the universe, leaning against the counter with a glass of red wine, and that easy grin that said he knew the world would always bend a little for him. The kitchen looked like a glossy magazine spread, a golden turkey resting on a platter, bowls of creamy mashed potatoes, green beans with almonds, sweet potato casserole covered in toasted marshmallows, my mother's pride and joy. I set a small flat box on the sideboard wrapped in simple brown paper and tied with a deep green ribbon. Inside was an envelope, a stack of carefully prepared documents, and the closest thing to a love letter I could write to parents who never really saw me. I had spent months putting it together. I had helped them more than they would ever admit, paid bills they could not pay, negotiated with a bank when they were weeks from losing the house, quietly wired money when Evan's latest business venture imploded and creditors started calling the landline. I worked late nights in Chicago, crunching numbers by day at a firm and taking freelance bookkeeping jobs at night just to make sure the people who insisted I was the dramatic one would not end up on the street. This box was my way of saying, I am here. I have always been here. Please see me. I wanted my mother to open it and realize how much I had carried. I wanted her to look at me, not through me. Somewhere in the back of my mind, the little girl inside me still believed in that moment, still believed that if I just did enough, bought enough, rescued enough, she would finally say the words I had been waiting to hear. I am proud of you, Grace. Instead, that Thanksgiving became the day she erased me, and before the turkey hit the table, she would drop the sentence that sliced my life clean in half. If you have ever been the invisible one in your own family, you already know this part by heart. The hope is the cruelest thing. It never leaves until the very last second. I grew up in a small town that tried very hard to pretend nothing ugly ever happened there. The kind of place where everyone knows your business, and your mother cares more about what the ladies from church think than what you actually feel. My brother Evan and I were only 2 years apart, but we might as well have grown up in different households. He was the golden child, the charming one, the boy who never quite followed through, but always had a good story about why I was the reliable one. The kid with straight A's and a part-time job by 16, the girl people came to when they needed something fixed. If there had been a family business back then, Evan would have been introduced as the future CEO. Even if he never showed up on time, I would have been in the back room doing the books for free, grateful just to be in the building. My mother loved telling stories about Evan. His funny comments, his bold ideas, the way he could talk to anyone. When she talked about me, it was facts, not stories. Grace works in the city. Grace is good with numbers. Grace is still single. Statements, not pride. Information, not affection. I moved to Chicago after college, got a job at an accounting firm, and carved out a life that was small, but mine. A tiny apartment above a noisy restaurant. A chipped mug that made coffee taste better, for no good reason. A thrift store couch that creaked when I sat down. I built something out of nothing. Back home, my parents' finances started to crumble in slow motion. A second mortgage they thought they could manage, a credit card balance that quietly ballooned a small catering venture. My mother insisted would put them back on the map, which mostly turned into unpaid invoices and spoiled ingredients when clients canceled. You would think with a daughter who was literally a professional accountant, they would have asked for help early. They did not. They asked once the water was already at their chin. The first time I paid one of their bills, it was the electric company. My mother called in tears, saying there must have been a mistake, saying they would fix it, saying she just needed a little help. This one time I wired the money that afternoon and told myself it was no big deal. It was never just one time. Soon it was the car payment because Evan needed the truck for his new landscaping business. Then it was the property tax, which had somehow slipped her mind. There was a hospital bill from a minor surgery she chose to ignore until collection notices started arriving in red envelopes. Every time the story was the same. "We will pay you back. You are such a blessing, Grace. I do not know what we would do without you." A week later, it was like nothing had happened. At least for them. For me, it meant staying late at work to pick up extra accounts. It meant saying no when friends invited me on trips. It meant telling myself it was normal to live on canned soup for dinner in my 30s because I had responsibilities. If you have ever been that person in a toxic family, you know exactly how it goes. They treat your sacrifices like air. Essential, invisible, and guaranteed. There was one secret I never told them. The year the bank was about to foreclose on their house. The house my mother loved partly because other women envied it. I sat in an office with a loan officer and signed my name on a refinance. They could not qualify for a loan. The house was saved on paper by Miller Grace Elaine. My name sat there quietly on the deed next to my parents. They never mentioned it. They never asked what it cost me. I did not push. I told myself that was what daughters did. They stepped up. They pulled their family through. By the time that Thanksgiving rolled around, I had done that for years. I came home with that small flat box, because some part of me wanted my mother to see the truth, but another part still wanted a fairy tale. I wanted her to open it and finally put the pieces together, to look around the perfect dining room and realize I was the reason it still existed. Instead, she looked at me like I was a problem to be managed. If you are sensing the foreshadowing here, so was I. I just did not know what to do with it yet. Thanksgiving at my parents' house followed a script more rigid than any Sunday service. My mother moved through the kitchen like a conductor, orchestrating side dishes and timers, snapping at my father when he stirred the gravy the wrong way. Evan arrived late, but still managed to be treated like a guest of honor. He swept in with a bottle of wine he probably did not pay for, and a story about a huge opportunity just around the corner. We sat down at the table laid with the good china, the embroidered napkins my grandmother had made, the crystal glasses that were only allowed out twice a year. My mother bowed her head for grace, not the daughter, the prayer, and thanked God for family health and the blessings of our home. She did not mention the daughter who had kept the lights on and the mortgage paid. I tried not to notice. The conversation, as always, orbited around Evan. His latest pitch to investors, the new website he was building, some contact he had met at a networking event who was very interested in his idea for a subscription box service that shipped artisanal snacks. I sat there with my own news growing stale in my throat. 2 weeks earlier, I had been promoted to senior associate at my firm. It came with more responsibility, slightly better pay, and my name on the door of a small office with a window that looked out over an alley and a sliver of sky. It meant I was being trusted, recognized, rewarded. I waited for the moment to share, for a lull in Evan's monologue, for someone to ask, "How are you, Grace? What is going on in your life?" My father did glance at me, once almost guilty, still working all those hours in the city. He asked, his tone making it sound like a hobby that irritated him. "Actually, I said I just got promoted. I am a senior associate now." My mother blinked fork halfway to her mouth. "That is nice, dear," she said. like I had just mentioned switching brands of laundry detergent. Then she turned back to Evan. So tell me more about this big investor, honey. The familiar ache settled in my chest. Invisible again. Always invisible. I could feel the small flat box on the sideboard across the room like it had its own gravitational pull. Inside were printed statements, a summary of payments I had made toward their debts, and a letter I had rewritten more times than I cared to admit. I had even gone to a lawyer in Chicago, a woman my age who specialized in family and small business law, to make sure everything was perfectly documented. She helped me put together a simple trust that would, if my parents chose, protect the house from being used again as collateral for Evan's projects. It was practical, yes, but it was also a plea. A carefully wrapped way of saying, "Look at what I have done for you. Please do not pretend I do not matter." When the plates were cleared and the pumpkin pie was cut, my heart started pounding. My mother stood at the head of the table, basking in the compliments about the meal. Evan made a joke about how he could never manage all this, and she swatted his arm, calling him her brilliant boy. I realized in that moment that the perfect time to give the gift was never going to appear on its own, so I made one. I stood up my chair, scraping softly against the hardwood floor. My voice felt too loud in my own ears. "I have something special for you and Dad," I said. "For both of you." The room quieted just a bit. My mother smoothed her blouse like she was stepping onto a stage. Evan raised an eyebrow, smirking. My father shifted in his seat, eyes dropping to his hands. I walked over to the sideboard, picked up the box, and carried it back like it was made of glass. My fingers trembled as I held it out toward my mother. "You do not have to open it now," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "But I wanted you to have this. It is kind of everything." She took the box with a polite smile, the kind you give the cashier at the grocery store. The paper crinkled under her fingers. "Oh, Grace, you did not have to get us anything," she said. "You know we do not need much." That is the thing I thought. You needed more than you ever let yourselves admit, and I was the one who gave it. "Open it," Evan said, leaning forward. "Let us see what the mystery is." My mother hesitated for a second, then pulled the ribbon loose and peeled back the paper. Inside, she found the folder, cream-colored and simple, with their last name typed neatly on the front. She frowned, already wary. She opened it, and her eyes scanned the first page. The summary I had written in plain language. List of payments made by Grace Elaine Miller, on behalf of Paul and Linda Miller. Mortgage, utilities, medical bills, vehicle loans, credit cards. Her gaze moved down the page, the dates and amounts I had carefully listed, each one with a small checkbox next to it. At the back of the folder was the trust document drawn up to give them protection if they chose to sign it. There was also my letter, handwritten, explaining that my name on the house was not leverage, not a weapon, but a shield for all of us. She flipped through the pages more quickly now, her lips tightening. The polite smile drained from her face, replaced with something colder. "What is this?" she asked. My pulse hammered in my ears. "It is everything I have paid for you over the past several years," I said softly. "The house, the car, the medical bills. And there is a trust at the back. It would protect the house if you want to sign it. I thought maybe it was time we all acknowledged what has really been happening. And I wanted to give you something that meant peace, not just more stuff." My mother laughed once, a sharp, humorless sound. "So you made a ledger," she said, "a bill." "No," I said quickly. "That is not what this is. I am not asking you to pay me back. I just wanted you to see that I have been here, that I have been helping, that I am responsible, that I am not the selfish, dramatic one you think I am." Evan snorted into his wineglass. "Wow, this is intense," he muttered. My father stared down at his napkin like it might explain how to disappear. I swallowed the words I had rehearsed all week, dissolving on my tongue. I thought maybe I said, forcing a small smile, we could finally be honest about everything. About the family business, about the way things really work around here. I thought my mother would cry or hug me, or at least say thank you. Instead, she did something far worse. She told the truth she had been holding inside for far too long in the cruelest way possible. And it started with that same sharp little laugh, like she had just heard a joke at my expense. My mother held the folder between her thumb and forefinger like it was something sticky. The candles flickered on the table. The scent of roasted turkey and cinnamon drifted through the air, thick and cloying. "Grace," she said, and my name sounded suddenly like a problem. "You always think money solves everything. You always have. That is not what this is," I said quietly. She ignored me, flipping another page, her jaw tightening. "You work those long hours in the city, and suddenly you think you are better than us?" she went on. "Like we are your charity project." "That is not fair," I said. My voice came out smaller than I wanted. My mother gave a little shrug, her eyes glittering. "Life is not fair," she said. "But we do not make lists and rub each other's faces in it, do we?" Evan shifted in his chair, uncomfortable. "I think she was just trying to help Mom," he said. She rounded on him. "Stay out of this," she snapped, then turned back to me. "We raised you, Grace. We fed you, clothed. You put a roof over your head. That is what family does. We do not sit around keeping score like some kind of accountant." "You asked me to help," I said. "You called me crying when the bank—" Her mouth tightened. "I asked for help, not a report card." My eyes stung. "This is not a report card," I insisted. "It is a mirror. I just wanted you to see me, to see what I have done, what I have sacrificed, to know that I am not the screw-up you act like I am." My mother leaned back in her chair, the folder resting on the table now. She folded her arms over her chest and looked at me, really looked at me in a way that made my stomach drop. "Do you want to know the truth, Grace?" she asked. The room went very still. My father cleared his throat, a soft warning, but did not speak. Evan stared at his plate. Something in me braced for impact. "Yes," I said, "I do." She nodded slowly, as if I had just signed a consent form. "Fine. The truth is, you were always difficult. You were sensitive. You questioned everything. Nothing was ever simple with you. With Evan, things are easy. He is fun. He is charming. He does not make me feel like I am on trial in my own home." I blinked. "I am not putting you on trial," I whispered. "Aren't you?" she asked, tapping the folder. "This feels a lot like you standing here and saying, 'Look at what a martyr I am. Look at all I have done.' Maybe if you had not been born so hungry for attention, we would not be in such a mess." The words hit like small, precise cuts. I could have handled that. Maybe I could have told myself she was just defensive, just embarrassed. But then she looked down at the pages again, shook her head once, and said the sentence that split my life into a before and an after. "Sometimes I wish you had never been born," she said. "Maybe then we would not have had so many problems." She said it in the same tone she used when she complained about the weather. No drama, no shouting, just resignation. A simple, brutal observation. For a moment no one moved. The furnace hummed. A fork clinked softly against a plate. My heart thudded so loudly I could hear it in my ears. Evan let out a weak, uncomfortable laugh. "Mom, come on," he said. "That is a little harsh." She waved a hand as if brushing aside a fly. "I am just saying what everyone thinks, but no one wants to admit," she replied. "Grace has always been a lot. Maybe if she were not so much, we would not have needed her to bail us out all the time." My father finally looked up. "Linda," he said quietly enough. She rolled her eyes. "Oh, now you find your voice," she snapped at him. Where was it when she decided to parade our business in front of us at the dinner table? They went back and forth for a few seconds, their voices rising. Just a hair. It felt distant, like a television in another room. I sat there frozen, the word never echoing in my skull. Never born. Not "I am angry with you," not "we are hurt." Not even "you went too far." No, she went straight to the core. Your very existence is the problem. I was suddenly 13 again, standing in the kitchen after another argument. My mother sighing and saying, "Why do you have to be like this, Grace? Why can you not just be easy? Evan never gives me this kind of trouble." Back then I took those words and swallowed them like pills, believing that if I just tried harder, I could become easier to love. I could become the daughter she wanted. Sitting at that table as a grown woman, I realized I had spent my entire life apologizing for taking up space. The chair scraped loudly as I stood up. The sound made everyone flinch. "I think I am done," I said. My voice sounded strange, too calm. "I am going to go upstairs." "No one told me to stay." No one reached out a hand. My mother picked up her wine glass and took a sip, already moving on. My father stared down at the tablecloth like the pattern could save him. Evan looked away, his jaw clenched, his eyes shining with something that might have been guilt or just discomfort. The walk from the dining room to my old bedroom felt like moving through a museum of selective memory. Framed photos lined the hallway. My brother's high school graduation, my parents on their anniversary cruise, a family Christmas picture, all of us in matching sweaters, my mother's smile wide and bright, my own smile tight at the edges. I paused in front of a photo of Evan holding a trophy, my parents beaming on either side of him. I was in the background, slightly out of focus, clapping. I realized with a strange clarity that I had been living in the background of my own life. When I reached my old room, I closed the door gently, then locked it. I stood there with my hand on the knob, breathing like I had just run a marathon. Downstairs, I could hear the faint murmur of conversation start up again, as if nothing life-altering had just happened. The normalcy of it was almost more jarring than the sentence itself. My mother had just wished me out of existence, and the world kept turning. The faucet ran. The television buzzed. The plates clinked. Life went on. That was the moment something inside me went still. Not dead, not numb, just quiet. Because if she truly wanted to know what life would look like without me, I realized I could show her, not with a screaming match or a dramatic scene, with the one thing she had always underestimated: the truth. My childhood bedroom still smelled faintly like the lavender sachets my mother had insisted on putting in my drawers when I was a teenager. The wallpaper was the same pale yellow print I had picked out when I was 14. Tiny flowers marching in neat rows. The bedspread had been washed so many times it had faded a little, but the pattern was still there. Small, controlled, pleasing. I sat on the edge of the bed, my hands resting flat on the comforter, and stared at the posters on the wall. Old band flyers. A faded calendar from a year I could no longer remember. A photograph of a lake we had visited once when I was a kid. The water calm and glassy, the sun setting in shades of pink and gold. We had taken a family trip there exactly one time. I remembered the way my mother laughed when Evan pushed my father off the dock. I remembered my own laughter, high and free before the arguments, before the bills, before the ledger in my head started keeping track of every owed apology that never came. Downstairs, a burst of laughter floated up, muffled by the ceiling. I imagined my mother making some joke at my expense, turning my exit into an anecdote about how dramatic her daughter could be. The sensitive one, the difficult one. For the first time, the usual wave of shame did not follow. Instead, something else arrived, a sharp, cold clarity. I stood up and opened the closet. The door groaned slightly on its hinges, protesting the movement. Inside, my old winter coats hung limply, shoulders dusted with neglect. On the floor, shoeboxes sat stacked in uneven towers. Behind them, shoved into the corner like an afterthought, was a brown cardboard box with my handwriting on the side, receipts and other junk. I pulled it out and set it on the bed. The lid resisted for a second. The cardboard fibers stuck together by time and humidity, then gave way with a soft tearing sound. Inside, the past sat waiting. Neatly folded envelopes, rubber banded together, printed bank statements, copies of checks with my name on them, and my parents' creditors on the other line. A payment confirmation from the electric company, a letter from the bank acknowledging the refinance that had saved the house, the hospital bill I had paid off month by month, the balance slowly dropping like a leak. I had saved everything without really knowing why. Maybe part of me had always known I would need proof one day. Proof that I was not crazy. Proof that I had not imagined the weight I carried. I spread the papers out on the bed, forming a snowstorm of white and off-white and ink. Each page was a memory. The winter the furnace had gone out and I had put the charge on my own credit card, paying it down over the next year while my mother bragged about how the Lord always provides. The time Evan's truck had been days away from repossession, and my mother had called me sobbing, saying it would ruin his future if the neighbors saw I had transferred the money and then watched him post pictures weeks later from a boys' trip to Vegas, his arms slung around some friend as they grinned over a stack of poker chips. The month my father's heart medication cost more than their insurance would cover, and I had skipped meals so I could send the difference. My mother had hugged me and whispered, "You are our rock, Grace," then a week later snapped at me for not visiting more often. I found a birthday card I had written to my mother years ago, the envelope addressed but never sent. Inside, my handwriting slanted earnest and hopeful. "Thank you for everything you have done for us," I had written. "I hope someday I make you proud." The card had been tucked under a stack of bank statements forgotten. I had no memory of why I had never mailed it. Maybe somewhere deep inside, even then, I knew my words would bounce right off her armor. Underneath the piles, there was a file folder from the lawyer in Chicago, the one who had helped me put together the trust. She had looked at me, brow furrowed, when I explained why I wanted it. "You are paying their bills and you are still not on any of their documents?" she had asked. "No. Will, no partnership agreement. Nothing." I had shaken my head. My mother preferred the unspoken arrangements, the secret rescues, the quiet savior she could call in the middle of the night and then pretend did not exist in the daylight. The lawyer had tapped her pen on the desk, thinking, "This is about more than money," she had said finally. "This is about control. She does not want you to have any." I had laughed it off. "It is just family drama," I had said. "I just want to protect the house. I am not trying to take anything." She gave me a look that said she did not fully believe me, but she drew up the documents anyway and handed them to me in a branded folder. "If things get ugly," she said, "call me. Do not try to manage this alone." Sitting on my childhood bed, surrounded by proof of every time I had stepped in and every time they had stepped on me, I realized something my 20-something self had not been ready to hear. I had been managing this alone for years, and no one had ever stopped me. No one had ever said, "Grace, this is too much. Grace, you deserve better," not even me. If my mother truly wanted to know what life without me looked like, I thought, staring down at the papers, then maybe it was time to stop cushioning her from the consequences. Revenge did not come into my mind as fire and fury. It arrived as a calm, steady thought. Tell the truth. Not the polished version my mother told at church. Not the narrative where Evan was the brilliant entrepreneur and my parents were victims of a bad economy, and I was the moody daughter who never quite fit in. The truth where I had been the invisible backbone of their so-called family business, the secret investor in their comfortable house, the quiet payback for every bad decision. I gathered the papers into piles, my movements surprisingly gentle. Envelopes here, bank statements there, legal documents in another stack. I found a binder on the shelf above my desk, one I had used in high school for a history project, and slipped plastic sleeves into the rings. Page by page, I slid my life into those sleeves. Every payment, every date, every sacrifice. On the first page, in bold black ink, I wrote a title, "The Life You Lived on My Dime." I stared at it for a moment, then crossed it out and wrote a different one, "The Truth You Never Wanted to See." That felt closer, less about punishment, more about reflection. By the time I finished, the binder was thick, heavy in my hands. Not as heavy as the years behind it, but close. I sat there with it on my lap, the edges of the plastic cool against my fingers, and felt something inside me settle. This was not about collecting sympathy or demanding payback. It was about finally putting all the pieces in one place and refusing to let them be swept under the rug again. If revenge is a kind of payback, then this was mine. I would pay them back in honesty. I did not sleep that night. The house creaked around me the way old houses do. The wooden beams shifting, the furnace kicking on and off, the refrigerator humming its low, steady song. Every sound felt amplified in the dark. I lay there with the binder next to me on the bed, my hand resting lightly on the cover, as if it might try to escape. My mother's words replayed in my mind on a loop. "Sometimes I wish you had never been born." There was a time when those words would have gutted me. That night they carved out something else. Space. If she wished I had never been born, then she could no longer claim me as her safety net, her fixer, her scapegoat, her invisible accountant. The math was simple. If my existence was the problem, then my absence could be the solution. Not by vanishing in the way my old, darker thoughts used to whisper when things got bad. Not by harming myself or abandoning life. By stepping out of the role she had written for me and refusing to ever step back into it. Around 3 in the morning, I sat up and turned on the lamp. The light spilled over the bed, illuminating the binder, the stacks of leftover paper, my packed suitcase in the corner. My reflection in the mirror looked unfamiliar. My eyes were clear. My jaw was set. I opened my laptop and began to type. Not a letter, not at first, a timeline. The winter I paid the overdue gas bill so they would not lose heat. The spring I wired money for Evan's truck. The summer I covered the balloon payment on their second mortgage. The fall I paid for my father's medication. Year after year, holiday after holiday, times when I drove home for Thanksgiving or Christmas and knew even before I walked through the door that a request would be waiting. I wrote down each one in plain language. No accusations, just facts. Then I opened a new document and started drafting something else. A straightforward, unemotional letter addressed to the family lawyer back in town. An older man named Harold who had handled my grandparents' wills, my parents' mortgage, and every property transfer anyone in our family had ever signed. Dear Mr. Barnes, I wrote, I am writing to clarify my position as co-owner of my parents' home and to formally withdraw from any future financial responsibility for their debts. I explained in careful sentences that any payments I had made up until that point were gifts, not loans, that I expected nothing in return, that I had no desire to claim a larger share of their estate. But I also informed him that I would not going forward be bailing them out again. I asked him to put it in writing, to send a copy to my parents to update any relevant files so that no one, not a bank, not a relative, could claim I had an obligation to continue. I CC'd my lawyer in Chicago, the woman who had warned me this might happen. I knew she would have my back. Next, I wrote an email to the treasurer at my parents' church. A woman I liked, someone who had once quietly slipped me a 20 when she found out I had gone without lunch to pay a bill. I did not share details. I simply informed her that any future donations or payments from me would be made directly through the church, not through my mother. A boundary, not a blast. Then I opened one more document. This one was not addressed to anyone in particular. It was addressed to the people who had only ever heard my mother's version of the story. Family friends, church ladies, neighbors who had watched us grow up and thought we were the perfect family. The people who would inevitably be told that ungrateful Grace had ruined Thanksgiving, had humiliated her poor mother, had turned her back on her parents. I wrote that letter in the same calm tone I had used in the video. I never made the one that flickered as an idea in the back of my mind. I explained simply that for years I had quietly provided financial support to my parents and my brother while being treated as the difficult one, the dramatic one, the one who never did enough. I did not include numbers. I did not attach documents. I did not need to. I knew deep down that if it ever came to that, the binder would do the talking. When I was done, I sat back and read everything. It did not feel like revenge in the way television shows portray it. There was no dramatic soundtrack, no flames, no triumphant monologue. It felt like opening a window in a stuffy room, like letting in fresh air. I printed the letter to Mr. Barnes and slipped it into the binder. On the inside cover, I wrote a single sentence in my neatest handwriting. You wished you had lived without me. This is what that looks like. I placed the binder into a plain, sturdy envelope I had found in my father's desk and sealed it. On the front, I wrote my mother's name. Not Mom, not Mother, just Linda. Another envelope thinner. Got the letter to Mr. Barnes. I addressed it to his office. Their address, clear in my memory, after years of watching legal paperwork pass across the dining table. A third envelope, smaller, held a short note from my father. I did not write much. Dad, I love you. I always have. I cannot keep doing this. I hope someday you find your voice, Grace. I put that one in the top drawer of his desk under the TV remote manuals I knew he never threw away. By the time the sun began to lighten the sky, my plan was simple. I would leave the binder where my mother could not avoid it. I would mail the letter to the lawyer on my way out of town. I would not argue or explain or justify. If she wanted to live as if I had never been born, I would give her the closest possible version of that wish. No more emergency transfers. No more quiet bailouts, No more making excuses to relatives about why I could not afford to fly somewhere while simultaneously covering a surprise bill back home. She could tell whatever story she wanted about me. That I was ungrateful, that I was cold, that I had chosen money over family. The difference now was that for the first time I would not be there to absorb the fallout. If you have ever been the one who always stays, always forgives, always finds a way to make it work, you know how radical that choice is. Revenge, in my case, was not about making them suffer. It was about finally letting them feel the natural consequences of their own choices. And about finally choosing myself. Thanksgiving morning in my parents' house always used to feel like a warm-up for Christmas music playing softly on the radio. The smell of cinnamon rolls and coffee. The clatter of pans as my mother prepped dishes for the next round of entertaining. That morning, the air felt different, too still. I dressed slowly, pulling on a soft sweater and jeans, brushing my hair mechanically. When I looked in the mirror, the woman staring back at me seemed unfamiliar. Her eyes were steady. Her shoulders were not hunched. Downstairs, I could hear the television murmuring. My father was up. My mother, I guessed, was in the kitchen, rearranging the world into something she could manage. I picked up my suitcase and the large envelope with the binder inside and opened my bedroom door. The hallway felt shorter than it had the night before. My feet knew the path by heart. My father sat at the dining table with a mug of coffee, the newspaper spread out in front of him. He looked up when I walked in, surprise flickering across his face. "You are up early," he said. I shrugged. "Did not sleep much." He nodded as if that made perfect sense. There were dark circles under his eyes. He looked older than I remembered, the lines around his mouth deeper. "Your mother," he began, then stopped. His eyes dropped to the envelope in my hand. "What is that?" "Something for her," I said. "For both of you, really." He swallowed Adam's apple bobbing grace. "About last night." I held up a hand gently. "Dad," I said, "please do not." He closed his mouth. For a moment it looked like he might push through anyway. Might say something he had swallowed down for years. Then he folded the newspaper back up instead. "Your coffee's on the counter," he said. In the kitchen, my mother stood in her robe, stirring something on the stove. Her hair was pulled back more tightly than usual, her lips painted a little too carefully. She glanced at me over her shoulder, her expression unreadable. "You leaving already?" she asked. "In a bit," I said. "I have work on Monday long drive." She sniffed. "Of course, work always work." I poured myself a cup of coffee and leaned against the counter, the envelope resting against my hip like a live thing. "I am not going to stay long," I said. "I just wanted to leave this for you." I set the envelope on the kitchen table and slid it toward her. She eyed it like it might explode. "If this is more of your accounting," she said. "I do not." "It is the truth," I said quietly. "All in one place. You can read it or not. That is your choice. But after today, I will not be answering questions about who paid what or when or why. It is all there." Her jaw tightened. "So you are just walking away," she said. I took a breath. "I am stepping away," I corrected. "From being your unpaid accountant, from being Evan's secret investor, from being the villain in your family drama. If you want to see what life looks like without me in that role, that is your chance." She let out a short, disbelieving laugh. "You are being ridiculous," she said. "This is Thanksgiving. Grace families fight. They get over it. That is how it works. You do not blow everything up over one comment." "It was not one comment," I said. "It was a confession." Her cheeks flushed. "I did not mean it," she snapped. "Yes, you did," I replied. "And that is the point. You meant it enough to say it. You meant it enough to weaponize it. You have been saying it in different ways my whole life." She opened her mouth, then closed it again. Her eyes darted to the envelope, then back to me. "What do you want from me?" she asked finally. "An apology." "Fine, I am sorry I hurt your feelings." The words were flat empty, a reflex, not a revelation. I shook my head. "I do not want anything from you," I said. "Not anymore. I want things for me. Peace, freedom. A life where I am not constantly trying to earn the right to exist." She stared at me. Truly. Stared as if she were seeing me clearly for the first time. A muscle jumped in her jaw. "And what about us?" she asked quietly. "What happens to us?" My throat tightened for a moment. The part of me that had always rushed in, always fixed, always soothed, stirred. Then I thought about the binder, about the years documented inside, about the wish she had spoken aloud. I guess you will find out, I said. I picked up my suitcase and walked back into the dining room. My father stood by the window, staring out at the quiet street. I am heading out, I told him. He turned his face, crumpling for a second already. I nodded. I left you a note, I said, in your desk. He swallowed. His hand flexed at his side like he wanted to reach for me, but did not quite dare. Drive safe, he said, please. I will. At the front door, I hesitated for a heartbeat, listening. The clink of a spoon in the kitchen, the rustle of the newspaper, the small, ordinary sounds of a family morning. I realized that for years I had mistaken those sounds for love. I opened the door and stepped out into the cold November air. It sliced across my cheeks, bracing. The sky was a clear, pale blue, the trees bare and skeletal against it. I put my suitcase in the trunk, slid into the driver's seat, and started the car. As I backed out of the driveway, I glanced once in the rearview mirror. The house looked the same as it always had. Neat, inviting, deceptive. I did not imagine my mother opening the envelope. I knew she would eventually control freaks. Cannot resist information even when it hurts. I did not imagine her reaction. Rage, denial, tears, spinning the story to make herself the victim of my revenge. That would come. She would call it betrayal. She would say, I had humiliated her, that I had turned our private business into a spectacle, but I knew the truth. This was not about humiliating her. It was about refusing to be humiliated by her anymore. As I turned onto the main road heading toward the highway, my phone buzzed in the cup holder. I did not look at it. Not yet. I had one more stop to make. Harold Barnes's office sat in an old brick building on Main Street, squeezed between a bakery and a hardware store. I had been there as a child, fidgeting on a chair while my parents signed papers. I did not understand. Back then, I had thought lawyers were magicians who could fix anything with enough signatures. As an adult, I knew better. Lawyers could not fix everything, but they could write things down in ways that made them harder to ignore. I walked in without an appointment. The bell over the door jangling softly. The receptionist, a woman with silver hair and kind eyes, looked up from her computer. Morning, she said. Can I help you? I gave my name and asked if Mr. Barnes had a moment. She frowned apologetically. He is not in yet, she said, but he should be here soon. Is it urgent? I held up the envelope. Not urgent, I said, but important. Could you please make sure he gets this? It is about my parents' house and my position. Her eyebrows rose slightly, but she nodded. Of course, she said. I will put it right on his desk. Thank you, I said. Outside the bakery next door was just opening, the smell of fresh bread drifting onto the sidewalk. I stood there for a moment, breathing in the warmth, and felt something loosen in my chest. For the first time in a long time, I was making a decision that was not about cleaning up someone else's mess. It was about preventing new ones. Back in the car, my phone buzzed again. I finally picked it up. There were several texts from my mother. We need to talk. You are overreacting. How could you do this on Thanksgiving? You have no right to put our business on display like that. I scrolled past them to my father's name. I am sorry, his message read, you do not deserve this. I did not reply. Not yet. The old me would have called him immediately, soothed his guilt, reassured him that I was fine, that it was not his fault. The new me understood something painful. His silence had not been neutral all these years. It had been a choice. A choice to keep the peace by letting me carry the weight of everyone's discomfort. I put the phone face down and started the car again. The highway stretched out ahead, lanes of gray asphalt disappearing into the distance. The winter fields on either side were flat and brown, scraped clean by harvest. It felt like driving through a blank page. I stopped at a small motel just off the interstate when the sky started to darken. It was the kind of place that did not ask many questions. A neon sign buzzed faintly, promising vacancy and cable television. The room smelled faintly of cleaning fluid and coffee. A floral bedspread covered the mattress, patterns clashing with the faded carpet. I set my suitcase down and sat on the edge of the bed, my back against the headboard. The silence was almost overwhelming. I had spent so long filling silence with worry, with mental math, with anticipating the next call, the next crisis, the next subtle reminder that I owed my family my life. Now the only thing the silence held was my own breathing. I ordered takeout from a place nearby. A burger and fries and a slice of pie. food that felt indulgent in its normalcy. As I ate, I scrolled through social media, half expecting to see some dramatic post from my mother. There was nothing, not yet. Instead, I saw a friend from work posting pictures of her kids at a Thanksgiving parade, a college acquaintance sharing gratitude for surviving a rough year, a stranger's video about breaking free from a toxic family, tagged with words like family drama, betrayal, revenge, karma, and healing. I watched that video all the way through, the creator speaking into the camera with a mixture of sadness and strength. Sometimes, she said, the most radical form of revenge is building a life your abusers never get to touch. It hit me harder than anything my mother had said. I put the phone down and stared at the ceiling. The motel walls were thin. I could hear a television in the next room, someone laughing at a sitcom. The hum of traffic outside was a low, constant murmur. For the first time in years, my phone was not my leash. It was just a device. It buzzed once more. This time it was my brother. "So, I guess you decided to blow everything up." His message read, "Nice job, you ruined Mom's holiday." I stared at the words for a moment, then typed back slowly, "I did not ruin anything I wrote. I stopped pretending." He replied quickly, "You made her cry. She says you humiliated her." "What did you even put in that folder?" "The truth," I typed. "The stuff you have known for years but were happy to let me handle." A long pause, then, "You have always needed drama, Grace. You could have just kept helping like a normal person. Family takes care of family." I felt a flare of anger, sharp and hot. Then I felt it cool, fading into something steadier. "I have been taking care of family for years. I wrote alone, that stops now." After that, my phone stayed dark. I slept better that night than I had in months. Not because everything was resolved, not because there would be no fallout, but because for the first time the responsibility for that fallout did not belong to me. In the weeks after Thanksgiving, I waited for the world to collapse. I expected a flood of angry messages. I expected relatives to unfriend me, block me, send long lectures about honoring my parents and being grateful for what I had. Instead, what I got was quiet. My mother sent a few more texts in the days immediately following, variations on a theme. "You have embarrassed me. Everyone will think we are terrible parents. Your little revenge stunt was cruel." That word, revenge, flickered on my screen, sharp and accusing. The old me would have rushed to deny it. "I am not trying to hurt you, Mom. I am just trying to be honest." The new me understood that from her perspective, honesty was cruelty, because it stripped away the story she had built around herself. The one where she was the selfless mother, the long-suffering wife, the hero of her own family drama. I did not respond, not because I did not have things to say, but because I finally realized I did not owe her my defense. My father called, once I let it go to voicemail. His voice when I listened later was rough. "Hey, sweetheart," he said, I do not know what to say. Your mom is, well, I want you to know, I saw that binder. I did not realize, I knew some of it, but not all of it. You have done a lot for us, more than we deserved. I am sorry. That is all. I am sorry." He hung up before I could hear him cry, but I could hear the wetness in his words. I sat on my couch in my small Chicago apartment, the city lights blurring outside the window, and let myself cry for exactly as long as his message lasted. Then I wiped my face and pressed delete. Sorry was a beginning, not an end. Maybe someday I would call him back. Maybe someday we would talk as two adults, not as a guilty man and his designated emotional caretaker. But not yet. The first real sign that my truth had started to ripple out into the world came from an unexpected place. My cousin Hannah, my aunt's daughter, messaged me on social media. "Hey," she wrote, "Mom told me about what happened at Thanksgiving. She did not get details, but she said your mom is very upset and that you made a scene. You okay?" I hesitated, fingers hovering over the keyboard. Then I decided that hiding was just another form of silence. "I am okay," I wrote. "I told the truth. Your Aunt Linda does not like the truth much." Hannah replied instantly. "No kidding," she wrote. Growing up, I always thought Aunt Linda loved playing the victim. Mom says she is having a fit now because people know too much. Whatever that means. I exhaled slowly. I had not mailed my binder to anyone else. I had only left it in my parents' kitchen and given the lawyer the letter. Apparently, that had been enough. A few days later, one of my mother's longtime friends from church, a woman named Carol, sent me an email. "Dear Grace," she wrote, "I hope you do not mind me reaching out. I just wanted to say, I saw some papers your mother left at my house when she came over in a state. I probably should not have read them, but I did. I had no idea how much you have done for your parents. I am so sorry. We should have asked more questions. We should have noticed. For what it is worth, I think you did the right thing. Sometimes the only way to shake a toxic family is to let the mask drop. Take care of yourself. Love, Carol." I stared at the screen, the words toxic family and mask standing out like bold print. I had not planned for my binder to become communal reading material. Knowing my mother, she had probably grabbed it in a rush, taking it to Carol's house in search of validation. "Look at what my ungrateful daughter did," she might have said, shoving it across the table. The thing about evidence is that once it is out there, people can draw their own conclusions. Slowly, stories trickled back to me. An aunt who called my mother out for dismissing my promotion while praising Evan's fantasies. A neighbor who gently pointed out that if I had really wanted revenge, I could have demanded the house title outright, or gone for my parents' inheritance. That word again, inheritance. My mother had always used it as a carrot. "One day, this will all be yours," she would say, gesturing to the house. The furniture. The china. As if those things could make up for the years of emotional starvation. Hearing that people were now using the word in a different context, questioning who had really earned what, sent a strange thrill through me. The truth was shifting the narrative. Not in a dramatic courtroom scene with a judge and a gavel, but in quiet conversations over coffee, in the whispers between pews at church, in the messages between cousins tired of pretending their family was fine. My brother predictably did not take it well. He posted a long, vague rant online about toxic people who weaponize money and try to ruin others' reputations. Anyone who knew us could read between the lines. The comments, though, did not go the way he probably expected. One old classmate wrote, "Sounds like someone finally set boundaries, good for them." Another said, "Maybe pay back what you owe before calling other people toxic." He deleted the post a day later. Little by little, the balance of power shifted. My mother called less often. Not because she had forgiven me, but because the less she talked, the less opportunity there was for anyone to challenge her version of events. Sometimes I wondered if she had opened the binder all the way to the end, where I had slipped in a final page, "In case you ever think I did this to punish you." I had written, "Remember, you are the one who wished you had never had to deal with me. I am simply giving you what you asked for, a life without my support, without my presence, without my silence." It was a will of sorts. Not about money or property, but about emotional inheritance. I was leaving behind the role I had been forced to play and taking my self-worth with me, and I was not going back to claim what they thought they owed me. I was going forward to claim what I owed myself. I moved apartments a few months after Thanksgiving. It was not dramatic. No big city skyline, no luxury building with a doorman, just a slightly larger place a few blocks away from my old one with creaky hardwood floors, a fire escape that caught the afternoon sun, and enough room for a small dining table where I could seat more than one person at a time. I bought that table with my own money and a sense of ceremony. The salesperson at the furniture store probably thought I was ridiculous when I rested my hand on the wood and smiled like I had just been given a promotion. In a way, I had. I started saying yes to things I had always said no to. Yes to dinner with coworkers instead of staying late to squeeze in one more freelance job. Yes to a weekend trip with friends to a small cabin by a lake that looked suspiciously like the one from my childhood photo. Only this time the memories would be mine, not curated by my mother. Yes, to a class on creative writing at the community center, where I found myself turning my experiences into stories, shaping the chaos into narrative. I did not talk about my family much at first. When people asked about Thanksgiving or Christmas or birthday traditions, I kept my answers vague. Eventually, though, with the women, I started to trust the older paralegal at my firm who had survived her own toxic marriage, the neighbor down the hall who always brought over extra soup when she cooked the friend from my writing class, who shared a story about being cut out of her grandmother's will. I began to open up. They did not tell me I was ungrateful. They did not ask why I had not just gotten over it. They nodded their faces soft and said things like, I get it, or simply I am so sorry. One of them, a retired teacher named Marie, who lived across the hall with her aging dog and a collection of potted plants, said something that stuck with me. Parents can be wrong, she said, sipping her tea. They can be cruel, selfish, or small. That does not erase the good they might have done. But it does mean you are allowed to protect yourself. You are allowed to tell the truth even if it hurts them. We were sitting at my small dining table, steam curling from our mugs. The dog snored softly at our feet. I told her about the binder then, about the sentence at Thanksgiving, about the choice I had made to step away instead of begging to be let back in. That is not revenge, she said when I finished. That is justice. The quiet kind. The kind that does not look like a movie climax, but like a woman finally choosing her own sanity. I exhaled something in me, unclenching. On social media, I started noticing more accounts run by women. My parents' age talking about family estrangement, inheritance, wars, wills that excluded the most responsible child while rewarding the one who had done the least. Stories tagged with words like excluded betrayal, secret, hidden truth, family, business, favoritism, toxic family, manipulation, confrontation, injustice, karma. Payback tables turned. It seemed my story was not as unique as I had always believed. There were entire communities of women who had been scapegoated, erased, used for their labor, and then discarded when they stopped being useful. One night on a whim, I recorded a short audio clip on my phone. I did not show my face. I just let my voice tell the outline of my story. The Thanksgiving wish, the binder, the decision to walk away. The life I was building now, one small choice at a time. I posted it anonymously in a group dedicated to healing from family trauma. I expected maybe a handful of responses. Instead, the comments poured in. This is my life, one woman wrote. My mother did something similar, another said. Thank you for putting it into words. Sometimes I think about my own revenge. Someone else confessed. Not to hurt them, but to finally tell my side. Hearing you talk makes me think I am not crazy. Reading those comments was like finding a room full of invisible daughters suddenly stepping into the light. It did not solve everything. My mother did not call sobbing an apology. My brother did not send the money he owed me. My father did not magically grow a spine and confront his wife. But my story was no longer locked in my head or pressed between the plastic sleeves of a binder in a house that had never really been home to me. It had become something else, a piece of truth floating out in the world, bumping into other truths, making women feel seen. That to me felt more powerful than any inheritance. I used to think vengeance would look like my mother losing everything. The house, the car, her perfect reputation at church. Now I understood that the sweetest form of revenge was simpler. It was sitting at my own table in my own apartment, surrounded by the people I chose, drinking cheap wine and laughing at jokes that did not involve anyone's pain. It was having a Christmas tree that leaned a little to one side, decorated with mismatched ornaments my friends had brought over, not curated to impress anyone. It was a Thanksgiving dinner where everyone helped cook, where no one was keeping score, where gratitude did not require forgetting the past. It was waking up on a cold December morning, making coffee in my chipped mug, and realizing that my first thought was not, I wonder what my mother is mad about today. My first thought was, I am okay, better than okay, free. The first Thanksgiving after the rupture, I did not drive back to my parents' house. I did not pack a suitcase or bake a pie or check the weather for the route. I did not wait for the text from my mother telling me what time to arrive, given as an instruction, not an invitation. Instead, I hosted, It Was Small, a coworker's stray. Thanksgiving. My neighbor Marie, the paralegal from work, a younger associate whose family lived across the country and who could not afford the plane tickets. A friend from my writing class who had recently divorced and did not want to sit alone in her apartment. We all brought something. I roasted a turkey for the first time in my life, following a recipe I found online. Marie made stuffing that tasted like comfort. The younger associate brought a pumpkin pie from a bakery. The paralegal showed up with a bottle of wine and a box of fancy chocolates. My writing friend brought a salad full of colors and textures, saying, Let us pretend we are healthy. We crowded into my small living room, balancing plates on our knees, laughing at the chaos. Someone knocked over a glass. Someone burned the rolls. The dog tried to steal turkey from the counter. It was by any traditional standard imperfect. It was also the best Thanksgiving I had ever had. At one point, someone suggested we go around and say what we were grateful for. I braced myself, old muscle memory twitching. But I did not feel the usual resentment, the sense of being forced to perform gratitude while ignoring the hurt. I listened as people spoke, grateful for second chances, for new jobs, for small mercies, for surviving. When it was my turn, I took a breath. I am grateful, I said slowly, for the chance to build a life that does not require me to disappear, to keep other people comfortable. I am grateful for women who tell the truth, even when it makes holidays awkward. I am grateful for chosen family. There was a murmur of agreement. Someone raised a glass. To truth, they said. To chosen family. We clinked glasses and drank. Later, after everyone had left, and the dishes were stacked haphazardly in the sink, I sat by my little tree, its lights twinkling gently, and checked my phone. There were no messages from my mother. There was a short text from my father. Thinking of you today, it read. Hope you are surrounded by people who see you. I typed back 3 words. I am Dad. He did not respond, but I pictured him sitting in his chair, phone in hand, my mother bustling around him, pretending not to notice the distance that had grown where I used to stand. I wondered what their Thanksgiving had been like. If my mother had tried to recreate the old script with one less character. If Evan had shown up late with his usual grand plans, or if he had found a new audience somewhere else. I will not pretend I did not feel a pang of sadness. Estrangement is not a clean cut. It is a jagged line full of what-ifs and maybes and late-night doubts. Maybe I went too far, a small voice still whispered. Sometimes, maybe I should have kept the peace. Maybe I should have found a way to stay without losing myself. Then I remembered the binder, the receipts, the way my mother had looked at me, and instead of saying thank you had said she wished I had never been born. I remembered the years of quiet exploitation, of emotional manipulation, of being cast as the villain in a family drama I had been funding. I thought about all the women my age and older who had written to me in that anonymous group telling me that hearing my story had given them courage to set their own boundaries. And I realized that my choice had never been between family and freedom. It had been between a lie and a truth. I chose truth. It cost me the illusion of a perfect family. It cost me the safety of the script I had known since childhood. It cost me invitations to certain holidays, certain gatherings, certain conversations where my absence would be noticed only as an inconvenience. In return, it gave me a different kind of inheritance, self-respect, peace, a sense of my own worth that did not depend on whether my mother approved of my life. On Christmas morning that year, I woke up in my own bed, the city quiet outside. Snow dusted the fire escape. I padded into the kitchen, made coffee, and sat by the window wrapped in a blanket, watching the light grow. My phone buzzed once, a mass text from my mother sent to a long list of relatives, friends, and acquaintances. Merry Christmas from the Miller family, it read, so grateful for another year of blessings. No personal message, no olive branch, just public relations. I let it sit there unanswered. I opened a small gift I had bought for myself. A simple silver bracelet engraved with a word I had chosen carefully. Enough. Enough as in I have had enough. Enough as in I am enough. Enough as in no more letting myself be erased. I slid it onto my wrist and smiled. I used to think revenge meant burning bridges and watching the other side panic. Now I knew better. Sometimes revenge looks like walking across a new bridge you built with your own 2 hands, leaving the old one to rot behind you. Sometimes justice looks like sitting alone on Christmas morning and realizing you feel more whole than you ever did in a room full of people who pretended to love you while draining you dry. If you have stayed with me this far through the Thanksgiving wish, and the binder, and the motel room, and the new apartment, and the quiet holidays, thank you. By now, you might have realized something that took me a long time to see. This is a revenge story, but not in the way we usually use that word. There are no slashed tires, no dramatic confrontations in courtrooms, no scenes where I stand up at a will reading and expose a secret inheritance plot in front of a stunned audience. There is no moment where a judge bangs a gavel and declares me the official winner of the family drama. My revenge did not make the evening news. It did something quieter and, to me, far more powerful. It showed my parents and myself what life really looked like without me. Without my money, they had to confront their own financial choices. Without my emotional labor, they had to sit with their own discomfort. Without my silence, they had to reckon with a truth they had spent years burying. They could still spin their stories. Of course. They could say I was ungrateful, dramatic, cruel. They could tell their friends that their daughter had excluded herself from the family. They could frame my decision as betrayal. But behind closed doors in the quiet moments, they also had to flip through that binder page by page and see the reality written in black and white. Every check, every payment, every sacrifice, that was my revenge. Not humiliating them in public, not demanding payback, not fighting over a will or an inheritance or a family business that had never really been mine. Just telling the truth and then stepping back, letting karma and consequence do what they always do when manipulation loses its grip. If you are listening to this, if you are a woman maybe in your 50s or 60s, maybe older, maybe younger, who has spent a lifetime being the fixer, the peacemaker, the scapegoat, I want to talk to you for a moment. Maybe you have a sister who was always the favorite. Maybe you have a brother who could do no wrong even as he burned through money and second chances. Maybe your parents held power over you with promises of what you might get in their will if you behaved, if you stayed quiet, if you accepted your place as the one who never made trouble. Maybe holidays like Thanksgiving and Christmas feel less like celebrations and more like performances. You show up, you smile, you serve, you swallow the hurt. When someone makes a cutting comment about your life, you drive home feeling smaller than when you arrived. Maybe deep down you have fantasized about revenge, about a perfect payback where the tables finally turn, where everyone sees you were the one holding everything together, where the toxic family you were born into finally faces justice. Here is what I learned. Revenge does not heal you, freedom does. Telling the truth might look like revenge to people who benefit from your silence. Setting boundaries might look like betrayal to people who feel entitled to your time, your money, your placating smile. But there is nothing wrong, nothing selfish, nothing cruel about choosing yourself. You do not have to make a binder. You do not have to send letters to lawyers or church treasurers or cousins. You do not have to blow up Thanksgiving dinner with a declaration. Sometimes the most radical, most satisfying, most karmic act is simply this. Stop participating. Stop explaining. Stop defending. Stop auditioning for a role. Perfect daughter, patient, sister, quiet provider that you never agreed to play. Start building something else. A small apartment filled with plants and secondhand furniture and laughter. A circle of friends who show up without demanding that you erase yourself. A life where holidays are flexible, where family can mean the people who stayed when you stopped making it easy for them. My mother once said she wished I had never been born. She meant it as a curse. I turned it into a challenge. I stopped being the version of myself she had written into her script. I let that version die, the invisible accountant, the emotional punching bag, the girl who paid for everything and received blame in return. In her place, I let the real me live. The woman who knows numbers and stories. The woman who can whisper words like toxic family betrayal, manipulation, confrontation, injustice, revenge, karma, and not feel shame. Only recognition. The woman who understands that sometimes the only way to get justice is to walk away from people who have no intention of giving it. If any part of my story sounds like yours, if you have ever felt excluded, erased, or used, I hope you hear this clearly. Your peace is not a crime. Your absence from someone else's drama is not cruelty. Your decision to stop funding your own mistreatment is not betrayal. It is survival. It is also, in its own quiet way, the sweetest revenge. Because while my mother clings to a shrinking audience for her version of events, I am here living a life she cannot control, surrounded by people who see me not just what I can do for them. That more than any house or heirloom or dollar amount on a will is the inheritance I choose. Thank you for listening to my story. Truly, every listen, every moment of your time matters more than you know. If any part of this hit home for you, if you saw yourself between the lines, I would love for you to stick around. Share your own story in the comments. Tell me about the family drama you survived, the revenge you dreamed of, the freedom you are slowly building. If you want to hear more stories like this about revenge, family drama, betrayal, hidden truths, and the quiet ways women like us reclaim our lives. Go ahead and like this video, subscribe, and join our little community. My small dream is to reach at least 1,000 of us scattered in our own kitchens and living rooms, listening to these stories and realizing we are not alone. Every click, every comment, every share is not just a number. It is another invisible daughter stepping into the light. And that more than anything my mother could ever say about me is a legacy I am proud to claim.